Hi, I'm Alison from the Ministry of Craft, and I'm here today with David Luke's school uniform to show you how to mend a burst seam on a skirt. The things that you're going to need to do this: some pins, needle and thread if you're going to do it by hand, and if you're going to do it by machine, you'll need the sewing machine. Just because you might have a hole in the seam, it doesn't mean it's the end of the garment. So on one side I'll show you how it can be hand stitched, and on the other side I'll show you how it can be done on the sewing machine. First of all, I'm going to show you how to do it on the sewing machine. I'm going to need to turn it inside out and sew the seam from the inside of the garment, and I will sew a little bit before the hole, probably about 2 centimeters, and then I'm going to sew across the hole and also a little bit after the hole. That will secure the seam so it doesn't undo. I'll be sewing over some of the existing stitches that are there. Before you stitch it, it's always a good idea to press it flat. So I'll take it over to the ironing board. Placing the seam flat on the sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to make sure my needle is centered. There we go. Just find out where the hole is. It's there, so I'm going to sew about 2 centimeters before the hole. I need to make sure the needle goes down directly on the existing stitches. So that's gone over some of the existing stitches. Just can make sure that's flat. Okay, and then over the hole, and then I'm going to keep going about 2 centimeters on top of the stitches, and then take that out. Check that it's sewn over it. So then, looking at it from the right side, that's perfectly sewn. There's no longer a hole in the seam. Okay, so on the other seam where there's a hole, I'm going to show you how to do that by hand in case you haven't got a sewing machine, and you're going to use a backstitch to do that, which is a strong hand sewing technique. Again, I'm going to turn it inside out. So that's the hole that we're going to repair. You need to get a needle and thread, a good matching colour thread, and you're going to use a double length of thread. So you're sewing on 2 strands rather than just a single strand, and I'm going to put a knot in the end of the thread. So again, what I'll do with this is I'll sew a couple of centimeters before the start of the hole, go across the seam in the same area where the hole is, and then a couple of centimeters afterwards, and that will secure at the start and at the end as well. Just doing a couple of stitches to anchor the end of the thread. And then when you're doing a back stitch, you go into the fabric where the seam line is, and you come out about ½ centimeter away. Okay. And then you actually go back in a reverse direction to where you started, and then you go ½ centimeter again in front of where this thread is here, and that forms a stitch there, and again you go back to where you went in, and you keep on in that with that process until you get to the other end, and it makes it a stronger stitch than, for example, just a running stitch where you're going up and down. This means there's never any gaps in your stitches because you're going back and you're closing the gaps that would have been left. Going back and then going forward, and then if you stitch over some of the existing stitches for a couple of centimeters, finish in the same way you started, just by doing a couple of stitches on top of each other, and that will anchor it in place. Just go through the loop of thread there, and that will form a little knot on the surface of the fabric, and then I can cut that away. Okay, that's the hole in the seam fixed using a hand stitch, using the back stitch. So both seams fixed perfectly, so there's no reason at all that this garment would have to be thrown away.